They thought they could control my life, but I proved them wrong. My name is Brianna, and 6 months ago I did something nobody in my family expected me to do. I bought a house, quietly, cleanly, and completely on my own. Not an okay-for-now starter. A real Loma. A 3-bedroom craftsman on Brookside Ridge, with a wraparound porch that looks like it's been waiting its whole life for a rocking chair and a glass of sweet tea. Original oak floors that talk back when you walk on them. A kitchen the color of buttercream, with a farmhouse sink and a window that frames the street like a postcard. I didn't tell a soul. Not my parents. Not my big brother Daniel. Not his wife Kara. Not my little sister Zoe. Not even my best friend Tessa. I was the middle Aldrich, the practical one who took double shifts, saved receipts, and learned to clap for everybody else. Daniel was the headline. High school quarterback, business degree, running dad's construction company. Zoe was the closing number. Grant-funded art residencies and a rotating cast of professors who called her brilliant. Me. I was the line item in the middle of the family spreadsheet. So when 5 years as a dental hygienist and a weekend photography hustle finally turned into a down payment, I decided the most radical thing I could do was keep my mouth shut and sign. The seller, Mrs. Ellison, cried happy tears at closing. "This house needs someone who'll love it for ordinary days," she told me, pressing a cool brass key into my palm. Chilly on a Tuesday. Snow boots in the mudroom. Porch lights after 9. I promised her I would. I furnished it slow. A thrifted apothecary cabinet that fit the hallway like it had my name written in pencil on the back. A linen sofa I stalked for months until it went on sale. I strung Edison lights across the backyard and planted tulip bulbs along the walk. I adopted a rescue tabby with a fox orange coat and named her Ginger. She patrolled the windows like a deputy and decided the sunspot by the fridge was hers by prior claim. My plan was almost cute in its pettiness. Live there a few months. Let the place feel like my heartbeat. Then at Christmas, casually pass the mashed potatoes and say, "Oh, if anyone needs me, I'll be heading home to my house." I wanted the reveal because every other milestone had been footnotes and fine print. I wanted to show, no prove, that the practical middle could be extraordinary on her own terms. Fate rolled its eyes. It happened on a Tuesday, the kind of Tuesday that never meant anything to anybody, until it did. I was halfway through Mrs. Dorsey's cleaning when my smartwatch buzzed. Ring notification. I only installed cameras because late-night true crime podcasts convinced me I should. A small black eye at the front door. Another at the back. The driveway too. I almost never checked during work. I checked. The live view opened and my blood turned to ice water. My mother was on my porch. Not at the curb. Not on the sidewalk accidentally. On the doormat, flowered toad on one arm, purpose on the other. With her was Kara, Daniel's wife. And a crisp blonde in a coat that looked like it came with a pre-approval letter. Mom dug in her bag, looked left, looked right, and pulled out a key. My key. She slid it into my lock with the easy confidence of a person who believes every door opens because she's the one knocking. I watched my mother open my front door and wave both women inside. The clip timer said they'd already been there 7 minutes. "Mrs. Dorsey," I said very calmly for a woman sprinting on the inside. "We're going to reschedule you for next week. My apologies, family emergency." I sanitized my station with muscle memory, stripped off gloves, and drove across town without remembering a single traffic light. They were gone when I reached Maple Bend Drive, but intrusion hangs in the air the way perfume does. The door was half-latched. My mother has never met a deadbolt she respected. A kitchen cabinet stood open. Someone had pulled a drawer, peered at neatly nested measuring spoons, and left it ajar like a shrug. The fridge hummed with its mouth not quite closed. On the counter, in my mother's looping script, "Brianna, sweetie, don't be mad. This is for the best. Kara and my friend Denise, she's a top realtor, think this property has real potential. We'll talk tonight. Love, Mom. P.S. The kitty is cute. I sat on the couch, the linen sofa I saved for 3 months to buy, and felt the floor under my life pitch like a boat. It wasn't just the lock or the cabinets or the casual trespass written in Hello Sunshine stationery. It was every time, we're just trying to help, had meant, we don't believe you know what you're doing. I called. Oh good, Mom answered as if we'd penciled this in. You saw my note? How did you get my key? I asked. Don't be dramatic, she sighed, which is what people say when they've set your house on fire and want you to focus on the excellent water pressure. Patty Ellison's daughter is in my book club. When she mentioned a young Aldrich buying the Ellison place, I did the math. I've been worried sick about you living there alone. It's not safe for a single woman, and you know the mortgage must be tight with your salary. Kara and Denise just wanted to look. Daniel's been thinking about an investment rental. I hung up because my mouth was making shapes my heart couldn't cash. My phone started doing a slot machine impression. Mom. Daniel. Dad. Mom again. Dad with his peacemaker voice. I turned the volume off and typed locksmith near me with the steadiness of a surgeon. Brianna. Caleb from Secure Solutions stood in my doorway at 8 a.m. the next morning in steel toes and a patience that looked like it had seen holidays ruined by exactly this problem. I told him it was a family boundaries situation. He nodded like a man who keeps a spare drill bit labeled family. Happens more than you'd think, he said, swapping out the deadbolts for high-security cylinders that turned like butter and clicked like a promise. He installed a keyed lever on the back gate and reprogrammed the garage to forget every remote but mine. Before he left, he handed over a small white envelope. Only 2 copies, he said. Treat them like passports. That evening, the doorbell went insistent. The kind of ring meant to tell you the ringer owns both the bell and the house it's screwed to. Brianna Marie Aldrich, you open this door right now. I stayed on the couch. Ginger watched from the arm like a furry gargoyle. We can talk through the door. I called, keeping my voice even. Or you can call next time like a normal person. Normal people don't change their locks to keep their mothers out. Normal mothers don't let themselves into their adult daughter's home with a stolen key. Silence. Then the thud of her toed against the rail, the sound of a woman changing tactics. Honey, she tried again, softer. I should have asked first. But I was helping. That neighborhood isn't ideal. The mortgage is ambitious. And if you sold in this market, you could make a tidy profit. Or rent it to Daniel and Kara. Take the pressure off. Denise ran some comps. There it is, I said to the door. Appropriate. The word you pull out when you mean smaller, quieter, less than. This house is mine, Mom. I chose it and I can afford it. You are being stubborn and short-sighted, she snapped, the softness snapping with it. You can't shut your family out when we are trying to help. I'm not shutting you out, I said, and heard myself become a person I wanted to be. I'm setting boundaries. If you want to visit, you ask. If I say no, you respect that. And you do not, ever, bring a realtor into my home without my consent. She breathed hard. Fine. Have it your way. But don't come crying to us when this becomes too much. And don't expect us to bail you out when you realize you made a mistake. Her footsteps hit the porch like periods at the end of a text you don't want to read. The Ford's engine coughed to life and dragged the night with it. Victory tastes a little like loneliness. For 2 weeks my phone did a winter impression. Quiet, gray. The kind of days that make you buy yellow tulips for your own kitchen just to prove color still exists. Dad sent his peacekeeping emoji trio. Daniel texted once, call Mom. Zoe, the Switzerland of sisters, sent, heard there's drama. Love you. Mom sent nothing, which is its own kind of message. I painted the guest room soft lavender and hung the gallery wall I'd been sketching in the Notes app for months. Black frames, white mats, photos I'd taken on early Saturday mornings when the city hadn't put its makeup on yet. Ginger supervised from her Sun Square. I told myself I loved the quiet because it meant the boundary was holding. Some nights it felt less like quiet and more like nobody on the other end of the string. On a Thursday, Daniel showed up at my job. He didn't text first. He doesn't text first. He arrives like a calendar notice. He filled my doorway in khakis and a button-down that said meeting at 9, successful by noon. He used the old nickname like a skeleton key. "Bree, we need to talk." "Not today," I said without looking up from a chart. "I have patience." "Mom told me what happened. She overstepped, okay? But you know how she gets." "How long have you known about the house, Daniel?" He shifted, the first crack in the CEO veneer. "A month? Mom put it together. She asked me to talk to you." "And you said?" He winced. "I told her to let you do your thing. For what it's worth." "For what it's worth," I repeated, because sometimes you have to hold a phrase up to the light to see how thin it is. "If anyone comes onto my property again without permission, I'll call the police." "That's not a threat. It's a boundary." "She's our mother, Bree. Not a criminal." "She entered my house with a key I didn't give her. Where I keep my life. That's breaking and entering with extra steps." The waiting room had gone church quiet. I dropped my voice. "I have to get back to work." He left with the face he used to make when I beat him at Connect 4. The one that said my winning was actually me losing because I'd done it the wrong way. 2 days later, my friend Tessa walked into my kitchen with Luigi's takeout and a bottle of red like a one-woman rescue mission. "You bought a house and my stylist cousin at the title office told me?" she demanded, planting chicken parmesan on my counter. "Rude." I laughed for the first time in days. I wanted one thing that was just mine. No committee. No commentary. She looked around, eyes softening at the way the late sun gilded the floors. "It's perfect," she said. "And you did it. Alone. Which is hot, by the way." Then she added, because Tessa never leaves the truth in the other room. "But you get that alone doesn't have to mean lonely, right?" I didn't answer. Ginger had butted my elbow and purred like an engine starting. The next plot twist didn't knock. Kara met me in the clinic parking lot 3 days later, Daniel's Silverado idling like a stand-in. She wore no lipstick and the kind of tired that concealer can't fix. "Can we talk?" she asked. If I'd made a list of people I expected apologies from, Kara wouldn't have cracked the top 20. But she took a breath that looked like it hurt and said, "I'm sorry. I asked your mom to show me the house." She winced. "Not like that. I didn't know she had a key or brought a realtor. I was desperate. Things aren't great." She told me about slow months at the company no one wanted to admit were slow. About a second mortgage payment that had started to feel like a dare. About Daniel's pride. How being the family's golden boy turns asking for help into a referendum on your entire identity. She said the investment talk had been a smokescreen for something simpler. She'd hoped I might rent them a room for a while. I listened until the shape of the problem emerged. Not malice. Fear. Not a plot to steal my home. A wrong turn with my front door at the end of it. "I'm not little anymore," I said finally. "I know," she said. "Your house is beautiful. You should be proud." It was the first time anyone in my family had said those words out loud. That night I stood in my kitchen, phone in my hand, and did the thing I'd spent months avoiding. I opened the family group thread, ignored the archive of memes and scheduling chaos, and typed, "Dinner. My place. Sunday at 6. Casual. I'm cooking." Dad replied with a thumbs up. Zoe sent 4 heart sparkles and "I'll bring dessert." Daniel typed "We'll be there." Mom didn't respond, which is how you RSVP when you want the host to know you're bringing feelings. Sunday at 5:55, I opened my own door before they could knock. "Welcome to my home," I said, and meant every letter. I gave them the tour I wish my mother had asked for. The patina on the banister where 100 hands had learned these stairs. The sunny office I turned into a darkroom nook for weekend prints. Ginger's kingdom. The tiny scuff under the window where the rocking chair kisses the baseboard. Proof that life happens here on purpose. Dad ran a contractor's palm along the restored mantel, whistled low, and said, "Good bones." Zoe's eyes did starry things. Daniel's attention kept snagging on the details that made money men nervous. And I caught Kara quietly smiling at the way the porch light made everything look kinder. Over plates of homemade lasagna, and a salad that tasted like backyard tomatoes, and the July they grew in. I told the truth. About years of saving. About spreadsheets and inspections. About choosing myself. When Mom finally asked the question sitting upright on the table, "Why didn't you tell us?" I answered with the one sitting beside it. Because I wanted to do one thing without asking permission. Because every choice I've made has had a chorus. I needed silence long enough to hear my own voice. I listed the tiny cuts that add up. Daniel calling my photography business a cute hobby. Dad liking my promotion because it would look good when you do something more serious. Mom explaining why the sedan I didn't buy would have been wiser than the Jeep I did. It wasn't cruelty. It was certainty. And certainty is heavy when you're the one everyone's always sure about. Kara apologized for the house tour she never should have asked for. Daniel's jaw did the thing pride makes it do and then slowly unclenched. He said, "If we ever need help, we'll ask you, not Mom." Dad said he should have told me sooner he was proud of the way my molding corners meet like they're shaking hands. Mom cried and said she worries because I do everything alone. I told her worry is a coat she can bring, but it doesn't give her my keys. We didn't fix a family in one dinner, but we started passing tools across the table instead of accusations. When the night ended, Mom hugged me on the porch and whispered the sentence I'd been chasing since 4th grade. "I'm proud of you." After the taillights disappeared down Maple Bend, I fed Ginger, turned off the porch light, and stood in the middle of my living room with the kind of quiet that isn't lonely. I thought, this is my house. Not because the deed says so, but because the boundary does. And then because life loves a third act surprise. My phone buzzed with a notification from the front camera. A figure stepped onto my porch in a dark hoodie. A cap pulled low. The image sharpened. Denise, the realtor I'd never met, looked straight at the camera, tried the handle, frowned, and took out a phone. Boundary meet test. The first time my cameras caught Denise, I thought maybe it was a fluke. Maybe she typed the wrong address. Maybe she was just looking. But when she came back the next night, this time with the flashlight sweeping across my porch like she was inspecting inventory, I knew it wasn't an accident. I called Mom immediately. "Brianna, don't overreact," she sighed, as though I'd caught a squirrel in the attic, not a realtor on my property after dark. "Denise just thinks the house has potential. You could make a profit if you let her list it." "It's not for sale," I snapped. "It's not yours to sell." That sentence hung between us like a swinging pendulum, sharp on both ends. Not yours. For my mother, those words might as well have been treason. By Friday, the family group thread was on fire. "Dad, let's talk calmly about this." "Daniel, maybe just hear them out." "Zoe, are you serious? This is her house." "Mom, we all need to think long-term, sweetheart." And then came the phone call that tilted the ground. "Daniel." "Bree, look, I didn't know how bad things were until Kara told you. The business is struggling. If we lose the house, it ruins our credit. Renting yours, even for a year, would get us back on track. It wouldn't be charity. We'd pay. It'd be family helping family." I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles cracked. "Daniel, do you hear yourself? You're asking me to hand over the one thing I fought for. The one thing that's mine, because you didn't manage yours." "Don't make it sound like that," he muttered. "How else should it sound?" I asked. He hung up. That weekend, Denise showed up again. This time I was ready. I didn't open the door. I called the police. 2 officers arrived within 10 minutes. They asked me questions, took down her description, and explained that without a formal trespass order their hands were limited. File the paperwork, one officer said firmly. That way if she comes back it's criminal trespass. So I did. I filed the paperwork. When Mom found out, she called me with fury in her voice. You didn't have to involve the police. Do you know how humiliating that is for me? For our family? No, Mom, I said quietly. What's humiliating is knowing my own mother gave a stranger a key to my home. The silence on her end was louder than any words. The following Tuesday, a letter arrived in my mailbox. Thick envelope. My parents' return address. Inside, a printout from Denise's office. A listing draft. Photos of my living room, my kitchen, even Ginger asleep on the sofa. And across the top, coming soon, prime investment opportunity. I couldn't breathe. They weren't just thinking about selling. They were planning it. I took the folder to a lawyer the next morning. A woman named Rachel, sharp as glass, who specialized in property law. She flipped through the papers, eyebrows rising. Do you own the deed outright? She asked. Yes. Then they have no claim. Not your parents, not your brother, not this Denise woman. They can't list it, they can't sell it, they can't even set foot on your porch without your permission. You want my advice? Draft a cease and desist. File it formally. Make sure everyone knows where the line is. Her confidence was oxygen. That night, I emailed the family. Effective immediately, you are not authorized to enter, access, or attempt to sell or rent my property. Any further attempts will be considered trespassing and handled by law enforcement. Daniel called within minutes. His voice was brittle. Bree, you didn't have to make this legal. You made it legal when Mom gave away my key. You're tearing the family apart, he barked. No. Iwisparat. I'm just not letting you tear me apart anymore. The next family dinner was a battlefield disguised as pot roast. Dad tried to keep the peace, passing roles like they were treaties. Zoe sat beside me, silently squeezing my hand under the table. Mom refused to look at me, stabbing her green beans with martyrdom. Daniel barely spoke, his shoulders tight, Kara staring down at her plate. Halfway through, Mom finally exploded. You're treating us like enemies. Like criminals. You broke into my house, I said. I was helping. You were controlling. The words sliced through the room. No one moved. Even Dad put down his fork. For the first time in my life, I didn't flinch. This house is mine. It's not an investment. It's not a safety net. It's not your business. If you can't respect that, then maybe you don't respect me. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Daniel stared at me like I was a stranger. Dad sighed, old and tired. But Zoe, sweet, quiet Zoe, spoke up. She's right. And you all know it. Silence followed. The kind that meant nothing would ever be the same. I drove home that night with Ginger curled in the passenger seat, and a strange calm in my chest. For the first time, the house didn't just feel like walls and floors. It felt like a fortress I had built from every time they doubted me. And I knew one thing for certain. The battle wasn't over. After that dinner, everything shifted. The house no longer felt like a secret sanctuary I was sneaking into at night. It felt like a line drawn in permanent ink. A fortress, a flag, a statement. And my family. They didn't know what to do with that version of me. The silence lasted 3 weeks. No calls. No texts. Mom didn't leave voicemails dripping with guilt. Daniel didn't storm into my workplace. Dad didn't offer half-hearted peace treaties. Even Zoe stayed quieter than usual. I thought maybe, just maybe, they had finally understood. I was wrong. On a chilly November evening, I came home to find a glossy for sale sign staked in my front yard. Bold letters. Denise's name at the bottom. My blood went white hot. I yanked it out of the ground, marched it into the driveway, and snapped it across my knee. Then I called Rachel, my lawyer. "They're escalating," I said, my voice trembling. Rachel didn't miss a beat. "Good. Now we escalate too. We'll file an injunction. This isn't just trespassing anymore. It's attempted fraud." The paperwork went through faster than I expected. By Friday, Denise had been served. And so had my mother. When Mom called, her voice was broken glass. "How could you do this to me?" she cried. "How could you do this to me?" I fired back. "This is my home, Mom. Not yours. Not Daniel's. Not Denise's. Mine. And if you can't respect that, then the law will make you." The silence on the other end was the sound of something snapping. Something that had stretched too thin for too long. By Thanksgiving, the family split into sides. Dad tried to host dinner, pretending mashed potatoes could fix legal battles. Daniel sided with Mom, his pride too wounded to admit he needed help. Zoe, bless her, sat next to me, sliding pumpkin pie across the table like a peace offering. Kara barely met my eyes, guilt etched into her smile. At one point, Daniel slammed his fork down. "You think this house makes you better than us?" I looked him straight in the eye. "No. I think it makes me free." That was the last straw. He left, dragging Kara with him. Mom followed, muttering about betrayal and selfishness. Dad sat there, staring at the turkey like it held answers it didn't. Zoe squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. And I realized that maybe one voice of support was enough to drown out a dozen of doubt. The weeks that followed were messy. Denise backed off once the injunction hit. She wasn't about to risk her license. Mom tried one last time, showing up at my door with tears in her eyes, begging me to reconsider. I stood firm. "You're welcome in my life, Mom. But not in my house without permission." She left with tears streaming down her cheeks. But for once, I didn't cave. Daniel and I didn't speak for months. Kara sent a quiet message once. "I'm sorry for my part in all this. I hope someday we can fix it." I didn't reply. Some wounds need time, and some need distance. But slowly, the noise faded. The phone stopped buzzing. The threats stopped coming. The house settled around me like it had been waiting for me all along. On Christmas Eve, I sat on the porch swing with Ginger curled in my lap, watching the neighborhood twinkle with lights. I thought back to 12-year-old me, sketching floor plans in the margins of math notebooks. She had no idea how hard it would be. But she also had no idea how strong she'd become. The house wasn't just wood and nails. It was proof. Proof that I could stand up, draw a line, and hold it, even against the people who claimed to love me. And maybe that was the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes, the people you need to set boundaries with aren't strangers. Sometimes they're family. But that doesn't make the boundaries any less necessary. I locked the door behind me that night, slid the key into the bowl by the entryway, and whispered to Ginger, "We're home." And for the first time, I believed it.